So welcome to your August ACE Talking Circle. Thanks for joining us this month. I know it's a busy time of year. Most of you are getting ready for back to school. A few of you, I think, are actually already back in school. So lots going on, and we look forward to hearing some of those updates as well. Let's go ahead and get disclaimed. This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. All right. Well, as we get going today, we have a lot of information to cover as usual. The first thing being, I don't know what you've been up to this summer, but Bianca and Olani and I, we really know how to have fun in the summer. We have been reviewing your APRs. So we have some feedback for you. We also want to touch base about the upcoming APR updates that are due, budget revisions, both for the end of this year 2 and as we head into your new year 3. Then we'll also cover some frequently asked questions that have been coming up and making sure everyone's got answers they need. And then, of course, an opportunity for some sharing. We want to hear what's been going on with you. It's been a few months since we've been together. Our last talking circle was all the way back in April. And of course, we saw many of you on office hours or the PD meeting in May and things, but definitely want to get caught up. And with that, I'll let Bianca welcome you.
Yes, it's so good to see everyone. It feels like it's been a while since we had a talking stick session. So yeah, I'm really proud of a lot of the success that's going on with many of our programs. Everyone by now should have got some feedback from their APR, and I definitely can say they're getting a lot better. And we still have a little, to work on, but we'll get there. And it's great to see a lot of people have been sharing pictures and videos and a lot of success stories and milestones met. And it's so great to see that, these funds and all the programs are doing so much for the community. So keep sharing. I love seeing the videos and pictures and highlights that's been happening. And if you guys are having any hiccups, please reach out. If you guys need budget revisions, definitely send those in. Most people have been turning in things missing from their APR, but if probably most of the people on the call, but there's still some that's missing. So please try to get those in. The more detail you guys give me, the more I have to brag about the great work that's being done. So yeah, we'll keep going, and please reach out if you need me.
All right, so let's launch into that APR feedback. So I wanted to start with some things that we saw that we thought were areas to celebrate. Like Bianca said, we have really seen a marked improvement in the APRs, and we can tell you've all been working really hard to have great performance reporting. The executive summaries are an area that really went well this year. Lots of good executive summaries that gave us a good overview of your program, but also kept it within that 2-page limit. Really happy to say that almost every one of you included all 8 of your DEPRA measures as required. So that was wonderful. And then we also saw a lot of you taking advantage of the Section C reporting tool, which was really a great way to ensure that we were getting all the information we need about your program. And remember, you don't have to use it. You can provide that information in another format. But I think for most of you, you found it was easier just to go ahead and use the little tool. You knew you had everything you needed then in your Section C and could just easily upload that. So that all went really well. If you did not use the Section C tool and need to go back and do that, just let us know. We can always send you that form. Really easy to send that over to you. And then the spots where we saw great things, but maybe a few areas to tweak. One would be explanations of progress, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that would look like. The other is reporting your Section A measures as requested. And then the final one is your Section B, that budget area. And I know we're always talking about budgets, but we'll go a little deeper into what we saw there. So for section A, your explanation of progress is really your opportunity to tell the story behind your numbers. So in section A, you report, oh, we served 72 kids, or 7 of our 42 parents were happy with the services we provided, or we saw a 3% increase in math performance of 8th graders, whatever those numbers are. But that just tells such a small picture of what's going on. The explanation of progress lets you paint the full picture. What were you doing that caused this increase? Or what was going on where maybe you didn't serve quite as many kids as you thought you were going to this year? Give us that whole painting. We don't want just a little glimmer. We want the whole shebang. So tell us what data you collected. Tell us when you collected the data, how you collected it, how you analyzed it. Are you making progress towards your goal there? Maybe you had some hiccups. What are you doing to address that? Maybe you've achieved that goal and now you're aiming even higher. Really give us an explanation of progress that's robust. Sometimes what we see here that holds you back is that you'll try to put a lot of measures on one page, and then you just have that one little box. Well, remember, you're not limited to just putting all your measures on one page. You can split those across multiple pages, and then that way you have multiple explanation of progress boxes where you can put all that information. A second option is, if you just really love putting all those measures on one page, you can always put that additional information in your section C as well. And you can say, the rest of my explanation of progress is in my section C. But don't let the limits of that little box keep you from telling your story. Now, the next thing was we were talking about reporting those measures in section A as required and as requested. So you have your 8 GEPRA measures. And this year we made sure to really give some very specific direction on how we wanted those reported. So for instance, on the one on the total number of options, we wanted however many service options you had over the number 1. So my tip here is those weren't suggestions. When we were telling you we wanted it that way, it's because that's really how we need it reported, particularly because when we look at GEPRA measures, those are the measures that OIE, Ed, and even Congress uses to show progress across the various ACE programs. And so if I report my program as the total number of service options over 1, but then Bianca chooses to do her reporting as the total number of service options over the number she had hoped to do, and then Alani decides that she's just going to report hers as a raw number instead of a fraction, now we've got a fruit basket turnover. We can't compare apples to apples to apples because I've got apples and bananas and kumquats. So we really need you to go ahead and put that in the way that we ask so that we can compile all that information and really do the best job possible of showing off the great things you're doing in your program. So we'll just kind of thumb through. If you have your APR with you today, I know I kind of threw out there in the reminder that if you had it, to bring it, take a look and see, did you report your GEPRA measure in this way? So like for number 2, did you put the number of options that you consider education related and culturally relevant over the total number of options? So maybe 7 of your 10 options. You can kind of see what that would look like here. Let's see, for the next one, meeting educational outcomes. Did you put the number of educationally related project measures met by the grantee over the total number? For students served, did you put the number of kids you served over 1? And if you have questions as we're going through, if you're looking back at your APR and you're like, I don't know why I did it that way, or I don't know why the way I did it maybe wasn't right, feel free to ask any questions you have. For number and variety of options, the number of yes responses over the total number of responses from your families. Same thing when you're asking if the quality of options met needs. Remember, this is all coming from your family surveys. This is definitely one that we got some different answers for, some creative responses. So for response time, the average number of hours it takes to respond to requests for specific services over the number 1. And this is one where, again, if somebody reports it in minutes and somebody else does it in hours and somebody else does it in days, it just makes it really difficult to provide that comparison and to compile the data. So make sure that you're not making your data look a little wonky by putting it in hours. And then the final GEPRA, the number of requests honored resulting in an added service over the number of requests made. And the primary question I get with this one, where people get nervous with this, is what if I got 3 requests and I wasn't able to honor any of them? Does this make my program look bad? No. What if all 3 of the requests were things that have nothing to do with your actual project? What if all 3 of the requests were for student ages that you don't serve, or were for things that were so exponentially expensive that there's no way you could do that? It's okay. All right, it is okay. That's not making your program look bad. That's where anybody? We'll see if someone in the chat knows where I'm headed with this. What would assist you with painting this picture? I know someone knows. Okay, I knew if I waited a second. Thank you, Shannon, for humoring me. It is your explanation of progress. So this is where you put, okay, we honored 0 of 3. Again, that's totally fine. And then in that explanation of progress, put in the full picture, explain. They asked for stuff we just can't do. They asked for us to serve pre-K students and we're a high school program. Put in that information, totally fine. And I do see, John, you had a question about should it be minutes? We actually asked for it in hours because typically what we were seeing in the first year of APRs is that most people, it was taking more time to be able to respond to folks. And so asking for it in minutes was getting too unseemly for people. Great. All right, so that's your 8 GEPRA. And then the one other thing I want to point out is then how we asked you to report for your other project measures. Okay, so these are the ones that are not GEPRA, the ones that are specific to your program. And my reminder to you there is that you should have a target. So you should have a goal set, and then you should have your actual. So you should be telling us, here was my goal, your target, and here's what I actually did. And it should all be in a ratio. It should all be in that fraction format. So that's kind of the biggest dilemma we see there as far as people following the guidelines is, did you give us both a target and an actual, and did you give it to us in a ratio? Again, the ratio being super important because that's how we compile your data. All right, and here's just a little example where you can see what that would look like. Any questions on that section A information? Okay, then the final area where we just saw some room where we could have a little growth is in your section B. So in talking about your budget. When we're talking about your budget, your section B, there are 2 things that we're looking for there. One is your budget narrative. That's the part where you type out a few paragraphs about your budget. And then the second being your actual budget reporting tool. Now with the budget reporting tool, just like we've talked about before, you're welcome to provide that information in another manner, but it has to have all the same information. And I'll tell you, that's one of our biggest hiccups is most people use the reporting tool, which is really, really super helpful. But we do have some folks who want to provide it in their own format, totally allowable, but they don't include all the same info. So a lot of times what we're getting is maybe just a copy of a budget printout from your fiscal office that means absolutely nothing to us. Often that has your budget broken down differently than you do for this actual budget reporting. Often it lacks detail, and it almost always lacks the information on the narrative columns. And so it's really, really challenging to then be able to take that report from your fiscal office and get the information that we need to be able to see how you're doing with budget. So super helpful to either use the tool that's provided or take the time to add in that additional context, because those budget reports from your fiscal office just don't have all the info we need. Now, the other side of that coin is your budget narrative. Definitely want to make sure that you're also providing your budget narrative. That's where you're able to talk about how often you're drawing down, what's going on with expending in general, your plans as you move forward. So it's important that you actually include both pieces. And then the final reminder is that there are 2 narrative columns on this reporting tool. Make sure to actually write in these columns. So let me kind of just remind you what they are, because it's been a minute since you probably looked. And again, if you have your APR with you, I would really encourage you to take a peek and see if you did this. But this column right here is asking you for 2 bits of information. First, it's asking, why do you have this available fund amount left? And 2, how are you going to spend it by the end of September? Very often, we'll get explanations of one, but not the other. So make sure you're explaining both. Those cells expand, so don't worry. Then this other column, this last column, is intended use of your carryover funds. So if you're anticipating that you may have some money left at the end of the year, what are you going to do with it in the new grant year? Now here, my big tip is, please try to be as transparent as possible about the potential for carryover. If you do your APR at the end of April, which is about halfway through the year, we would anticipate that you've spent about half your budget. If you're behind in spending, and let's say you've only spent 17% of your budget, this is an actual example. That means you have 83% of your budget to expend in the next 6 months. That sounds challenging. If you don't provide a really great plan, I'm not going to think that you can appropriately spend down that large of a sum of money by the end of September. So if you tell me you're going to have 0 carryover, but you don't really have a plan for how you're going to spend it down, that doesn't make sense to me. Okay. So make sure that what you're reporting makes sense. Be realistic. Really share with us what that struggle is, where you really are with your spending, how you're going to try to spend down those funds. And then if you realistically think you're going to have some money there at the end of September, just make sure to please provide us with an explanation of, okay, I'm going to have this amount left because I couldn't hire this position. Here's what I plan to do with it the next year. That's what that last column is for. If you have any amounts in this carryover column, there should be a corresponding explanation. Any questions about that? When I see the COVID wildcard has made it tough to anticipate interruptions in services. Very true. Yeah, and that's why you may run into sometimes those areas where maybe you're not spending the way you anticipated. So just being, like I said, as transparent as possible about those hiccups that you're encountering, how you're moving and adapting. Any other questions on any of this APR feedback information? All right, well, as you go back and look at your APR, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to answer any questions you have. But I would like to just get a little bit of feedback from all of you on this topic. So first, I would love to know, oh, there we go. What part of the APR do you feel like you do the best job completing? Do you feel like you have the best handle on what you're supposed to do? And you're welcome to throw that in the chat or, unmute and share whatever you prefer. But I'm curious. And I see Pamela saying the narratives. She feels like that's where she's kind of excelling. And also narratives. Okay, so a lot of people feeling like narratives are their strong suit. That's good. Anybody else? And I see section C took a lot more time. Yeah, so I will say with the tool, it is taking a little bit more time in the section C, but we're getting a lot better information in the section C. So kind of a little of each. I see the number ratios are my weakness. Well, and I'll go ahead and bring up my second question because y'all have predicted what part do you find most challenging. So yeah, the number ratios can sometimes be challenging. And I would really encourage you, as you're working with your data, if you get stuck or you're wondering, I'm not exactly sure how to go about reporting this particular bit of data, always feel free to reach out. We're happy to help with that. And I also see the report said section C was optional, so we did not submit. Yeah, and so that may have been a bit of confusion, and I think that's something we can definitely do a better job of explaining. So the section C tool was optional. The information was not optional. And I think that's where we need to do a little better job on our end of explaining that, when we make these tools, we're trying to make it easier on you. So you're not having to always create stuff on your own. And so you try to make it as easy as possible for you to see what's needed. But then the tool itself is optional, and you can always provide all that same info just in a narrative format or however you like. But I can definitely see how that would make it seem like all that information is optional. So yeah, we will definitely improve our wording on that. And then, yeah, executive summary. Yeah, so it looks like everybody's feeling like they're most skilled in that writing area where you're giving that narrative, whether it's explanations of progress or budget narratives or executive summaries. GAPR measures always get confused as to ratio or number. Yeah. And I'll tell you and it doesn't help that sometimes for other grant programs, you're reporting in other ways, but for any OIE program, ratio is the way to go. Ratio. We're all about the fractions. Any other parts of the APR that you've found kind of challenging or that we could maybe do a better job of providing some support around? Budget challenges, yeah. And I know it's always kind of nerve-wracking to have to talk about, oh, we're behind in spending, or, maybe things just aren't exactly where you want it to be budget-wise. But I'll tell you, the more information you can give us, the better. When Bianca's looking at your budgets, the more information she has to use, the better off it is. Submission is always gratifying. Absolutely. When you press that little button and you get the little, it's submitted and the timestamp, do your little desk happy dance. Can TA help coach and review justifications on the budget challenge? Absolutely. Yeah. We definitely meet with grantees and help work through budget issues, work through how to do budget reporting. We can help with any of that, definitely. What if our service providers are behind on invoicing for services provided? Ooh, good question. So one, you want to help them get up to date because they're holding you up. But that's one of those things that you would then want to explain, providing that additional context. And when you look in the budget reporting, there's a column for monies that have been expended because they've actually provided those services, but you haven't been able to draw them down yet. So it would go there, and then you could provide that explanation that, we've spent that money, but we have a service provider who's way behind on invoicing, and therefore we have not been able to actually draw down some of our monies. If we need to correct our GEPRA section, can you send us new documents or open G5? So we won't open G5. I don't know if you've ever met G5, but it's a real pain. So we will not be reopening it, but that leads us so nicely into our next topic, which is APR updates. So it is APR update season. So if you reported 999 on any of your measures, whether they be GEPRA or project, then you need to submit an APR update. And how about, I was just being asked about an incorrect number. You have an incorrect number, or there's just one that you need to change in section A. Hey, guess what? You need to submit an APR update. Now, if all your data that you submitted back in April was correct and complete, and you did not report any 999s, then you do not need to submit an APR update. Okay. So just keep in mind, don't feel bad. Most of us are submitting an APR update because the timing of the year really just leads to most people needing to submit some 999s or things needing to be updated. So you'll see Alani has popped in the chat the form that you'll use for your APR update. I will also send that out via email. And so you can do it either from the one in the chat or the one that I'll send out via email. And then you will actually be then sending that in, just like you did last year, to the oie@seiservices.com email address. So if you need to update anything because of 999s or incorrect information, you'll just complete that section A form. You only have to do it for the ones you need to correct or update. And then email it in to oie@seiservices.com. And then we're also encouraging you that if you realize that you did not include that optional section C tool or the information in another format, then we would encourage you to go ahead and submit that. Okay. But yes, it's just that section A data, and it's due October 27th. So you have plenty of time. We wanted you to have the form well in advance. And of course, if you have that information already, or you'll have it shortly, you're welcome to submit early. You don't have to wait until October 27th at noon to send it in. You are welcome to send it just as soon as you're done updating any of that information. I know some of you may need to wait until the end of September because that's the actual end of the grant year. That's totally fine. But it will be due October 27th. Yeah, and I see, yeah, our data won't be available until mid-September. Totally fine. Like I said, we just wanted you to have the information in ample time so that you're not having to scramble. And then that way you have nice leisurely reporting to October 27th. Any other APR update questions? You know what you're updating, how you're updating. And again, just a reminder that if you have questions or you need help, just reach out. We are happy to help. That's what we're here for. All right. So then we're going to hop over to our other favorite topic, budget revisions. Yay. Oh, and I see a quick question. These updates get emailed in. Yes, you're going to email it to oie@seiservices.com. And I also had a question, can we update that optional section C information? Absolutely. Yeah, so you can send that in the same way. All updates just go to that OIE email address. That way we can keep them nice and neat. All right, so it's also a good time to be thinking about if you happen to need any final budget revisions for this year, year 2. Budget revisions can be submitted at any time as the need and requirement arises, but be nice to Bianca. Try to submit these at least 30 days before the end of the fiscal grant year, which is the end of September. Okay, it takes time for her to review and approve those, and she also has to close out the grant year for you and get out your new GANs and things. So really try, if you need an end of year budget revision, totally fine, A-okay, but try to get those in by the end of this month so that there's time for them. And that's a budget revision for your year 2 budget. Now, what about for the new year? So as usual, everyone is required to complete a year 3 budget revision as you kick off your new grant year. This is for the new fiscal year. So October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. Okay, new grant year. You'll use that optional budget revision form. I know the use of optional is kind of tricky there, but basically, please use the form, particularly with your ACE budgets. There's so many formulas you have to complete that I beg of you to use the form, and you're going to submit that via email to Bianca. So budget revisions go straight to Bianca for review and approval. This year, they're going to be due November 17th. Okay. Now, you're welcome to start on that right now, but you're probably not going to be able to complete it until you get your new GAN, which will confirm your year 3 grant award. Those typically go out around the beginning of September. Remember, you'll get that in G5, and then you can finish up that budget revision for the new year. And just kind of reiterating, every single ACE grantee is required to do a year 3 budget revision. This is how we kick off your year 3. Okay, so Olani has put the budget revision form over in the chat. It's the same form we've been using. The one thing I will point out is that it's updated for year 3. So all your dates are updated. Everything's updated to say year 3. And then the second update being, I've tried to pop in a few more helpful tips. So let me show you what I mean by that. And you can tell me, I'm always open to information. Tell me if this is helpful or if you're like, no, still not helpful. Need more. And we can do that. It's taking a second to pull up. So let me, sometimes when I stop share and then reshare, it makes it go faster. Okay. Here we go. All right. So remember, your budget revision forms are 2 pages. The first being that per student information. This is also the perfect time as you kick off a new grant year to update your service provider list here. And then over on the actual form, I'll show you what I mean by put in a few new reminders. So you'll see the form looks exactly the same. I haven't changed the form at all, other than, like I said, updating the dates and the fact that it says year 3. But there are some new dates, some new reminders. So things like reminding you of the year, the carryover, what things auto-calculate. So when you hover over any of these, it'll give you the little helpful tip. Also some new kind of column headers to make it a little bit more descriptive and hopefully help you with that. And then one other one, just a reminder that when you want to add rows, because this is probably my most common question I get, when you want to add rows and you want it to add rows appropriately, if you highlight the bottom expenditure, not the top expenditure in a category, but the bottom expenditure in a category, right click, insert, then it's going to continue tabulating the way it should. If you do it from the top expenditure, depending upon what version of Excel you're using, it may or may not preserve your formulas for you. Okay, So that's my one little common tip. But like I said, the form is exactly the same with the exception of more embedded helpful tips to hopefully be of use. All right, so I'm switching back here. Let's see, can we relax the restrictions on the spreadsheet? So the only restrictions on the spreadsheet currently, as I'm switching back to the other screen, is that cells with formulas are protected. Now, I'll tell you 2 reasons why it's set up that way. One is so that it will tabulate nicely for you, and you'll get all the things adding up the way it should. And it also will then alert you with color if any of your things are out of whack. So for instance, if your project costs have exceeded 20%, it's going to change color to alert you, whoa, you're out of whack. If your total existing budget does not match your revised budget, it's going to change color to alert you, whoa, got to double check that. So that's the first reason that those formulas are protected. The second reason is that then you're going to send this in and Bianca is going to try to look at all of them and review them and approve them as quick as humanly possible, which is great. But if the formulas have been taken out, then she has to go through and hand check all your math. If the formulas have been protected so that she can go ahead and just trust the numbers, she can go through and do that in a much faster manner. So that's the reason for that. And yes, there are color warnings for down to change because that's it not matching up. So yes, sorry about that part, but yeah. I will say, if you have questions, we'll have folks who set up coaching calls. We can do coaching calls on the budget, or that just want us to take a peek at their budget spreadsheet and they'll send it over and we can do it via email even. Happy to help with any of that or provide feedback. And I see we were asking questions about GANs again, and Bianca mentioned early September is when you can typically get that new GAN. That's the goal. Any other budget questions? Let's see. Yeah, and I see some saying, yeah, that now that they're more used to the form. And yes, this is the same form that Alani previously offered in the chat. And we can even pop it in once more. Oh, and thank you, Diane. She said that she highly recommends that. Get online with them and they're super helpful. That's the only way I got it figured out. So I do appreciate the coaching shout out. We are, like I said, always happy to schedule those times with you. That is what we're here for, is to help make this as easy and painless as possible. All right, any other budgetary questions? All right. Okay, so let's move to our next, which is our frequently asked questions. So most of you know we offer office hours on a monthly basis. It is an optional event. It is open to all OIE grantees, so you really get a nice mix of different grantees. And it's a time that you can brainstorm. It's a time that you can just come and network, ask any questions you have, just a really open time for about an hour each month. But we also try to look at what are questions that are coming up a lot at office hours. Because if it's coming up a lot, that might be something we need to cover with everybody and just make sure that everyone has the information they need to be successful. So as we looked at that over the last few months, we had a few FAQs that we wanted to cover. One being unique student number. So when we ask how many students have you served this year, we're asking for your unique student number, where you count each student only one time, even if a student receives multiple services. So in a grant year, you might have student A who signed up for 4 different services, and you might have student B who only signed up for 1 service, but they each just count one time. So that's still just 2 kiddos, because we're just counting human kiddos. But it comes up a lot where folks want to count that one kid as 4 because they received 4 services, but that's going to throw off your student count. So let's look at this example. In this example, we have these 3 kids who attended after-school tutoring, and those 2 kids who attended work-based learning. And you'll see, if we're just going by looks, some of these kids may be the same. So let me know in the chat, based on this, how many unique students do you think we've served? Take a minute. Okay. 30,000. I'm a little concerned with our 30,000. Let's see. 3 and 4 are our most common answers. Okay. Some of you are saying your own. Yes. So y'all have all served amazing numbers of kiddos, but in this example, we have served 4 kiddos. 4. Okay. So here's the reason. We have this little dude here, and this one, and this one. Those are 3 unique students. Then we come over here. We don't have anyone over here that looked like that. So that's a 4th kid. But this kid is this kid. So they can only count once, even though they came to 2 different things. So yeah, I apologize. I don't think I was clear. I'm talking about in the example on the slide. So yes, our little pigtailed friend came to 2 things. So she still just counts as 1. So it's 4 kids. All right. We got another chance though. Let's do one more. We'll do it a little different this time. So now we've got these students, and you can see the different services that they've attended. So in this example, how many unique students have we served? Right, give you a chance to lock in those answers. All right, big reveal. 6. So you can see there are 6 different students with different names right here. They've attended a number of different services, but it's just 6 human kids. So keep in mind when you're reporting on that GEPRA measure of how many students you've served, it's how many unique students you've served this grant year. All right. All right. Next up. The other is we get quite a few questions about when you want to make some changes. Who's eligible to receive your services? What services can you offer? So the first thing to think about when you're doing this is always go back to your notice inviting applications and your grant application. Ultimately, your program is responsible for doing what you said you were going to do. So if you never mentioned that you were going to serve elementary kids, you only said you were going to serve high school kids, then you're responsible for serving high school kids, not elementary school kids. So that would be something outside of your proposal. So always go back to that proposal, that grant application, as well as your notice inviting applications, which is the basis for your ACE program. Beyond that, there are typically going to be things that require OIE approval That would be anything outside of that approved project or that has significant budget implications. And then there are going to be things that are really just up to you, to your organization and your organization's policies and practices. So let's look at a few examples at kind of how you can determine, is it something I have to ask Bianca about, or is it just something I need to determine within my own organization? All right, so our first one here. You're receiving requests for services from tribal citizens outside the service area defined in your application. Do we need to ask Bianca, or is it a local decision? Okay, so far 2 votes for asking Bianca. 3 votes for Bianca. All right, looks like the Ask Biancas are winning. Let's see. That's because you need to ask Bianca. Okay, so one of the key things here is it's something outside of what's defined in your application. So that means ask for permission, put in that request, explain why you want to do that, and then you can get that figured out. All right, let's look at our next one. A partner district is requesting that we serve non-native youth in the high school. Do I ask Bianca, or is this a local decision? I have an oh no. I'm not sure which side that's on. Getting some Biancas, some just no's, a local. Let's see. All right, so y'all had a great gut reaction. We can't do that. Your grant funds are for Native youth. So you're welcome to ask Bianca, but I can tell you what she's going to say, because the answer is no, you cannot serve those youth. I want to have Bianca give you an email so they're not mad at you. Yeah, you're always welcome to ask for some documentation to help smooth over issues. But yeah, that's going to be a no. That is not an allowable grant activity. Had to throw in a trick one. It's the beginning of the year. We got to make sure our summer brains have turned off. We're getting that back in the game. All right. We have a group of siblings who spend summer on the reservation with their parent and want to participate in our summer program. Are we asking Bianca, or is it a local decision? Let's see, I see local, only if they enroll in a school you're currently serving, depends on residents, depends on who has the grant, the district or the tribe. Some local. All right, let's see this one. All right, so it is under local, but all of you actually are really right. This really has to do with what's in your project. So like some people pointed out, you're going to need, or like Ryan's saying right now, you need more info. So yeah, if you're the school district, then you may choose not to do that because you're only serving kids in your school district. That was your grant. If you're the tribe and you were serving a geographic area, then that may be within. So it's really going to depend on more specifics of the situation, but ultimately it's up to that local decision of, do they meet the specifications of who you're serving with your grant? Okay. So absolutely, y'all are all on the right track. You're going to get that information to see if they meet your grant specifications and locally decide. All right. We want to move some funds from staffing to contracts because we're going to expand our tutoring services to additional grades and accommodate all the requests for services. Bianca or local? Okay, I'm seeing some Bianca. Lots of Biancas. All right, let's test it out. Yeah, because it's going to be needing a budget revision, then it's going to need to be a Bianca. And Karen brings up a great point. It also depends on the grade in your project. So we're assuming here that we're expanding to additional grades that we already serve, which would be fine. But if it's additional grades that you don't currently serve, then that's definitely a Bianca because that's a scope issue. But if it's primarily just a budget revision dilemma, then you're going to put together that budget revision, submit it to Bianca and get that approval. All right, I believe this is our last one. We identified a need to expand language services to accommodate more students in the grades served and must reallocate funds from one contractor to another. So we've got more kids who want to learn the language than we anticipated. So we need to up that contract. Do I need to ask Bianca? Is it a local decision? What shall we do? So far we're tied. We have one Bianca, one local. Well, let's get a couple more votes before I share. I like local, but share the good news. We always want to share the good news. All right, let's give it a look. All right, y'all are on the right track. So it is a local decision. As long as you have, the wiggle room to up that contract, you're fine. If you need to do a bigger budget revision, if you need to pull it out of personnel or you need to pull it out of supplies, then that could become a Bianca thing. But if you're just reallocating funds from one contractor to another, you're all good. It's a local decision. All right. Oh, good question. Can you speak to the potential supplanting issue here? So, Spencer, are you talking about supplanting as far as because we're taking from one contractor to the other? Okay, so with that, it's actually not an issue of supplanting to take from one contractor to another. So kind of to give some context, if it's a matter of you had one contractor who was providing math tutoring and one who was providing language, and you are not needing as much of the math tutoring, you don't have as many kids signed up, but you have more kids who want language, moving that money is not actually supplanting. As well as, let's say you have two language providers, because one can't handle all those needs. If you're adding more money to one because they can handle more kids, that's still going to be fine and not be a supplanting issue. The only time that this would become a supplanting issue would be if, say, you're the tribe providing language services and you're going into the school. If the school had already been providing a language class and you now take over paying that teacher, that can become a supplanting issue. But as far as moving it from one contractor to the other, that would not be. Does that answer that? Okay, great. All right, and then a few more pieces on the changes to activities or services FAQs. So some good guiding questions would be, is this outside or beyond the scope of what was written in my original approved proposal? If so, ask Bianca. Does it have significant budget implications? Are you going to need to do a budget revision? Budget revision equals ask Bianca. And does it entail a change in key personnel? Okay, so does it involve a change in your project director situation or anyone else you've indicated are key personnel? Ask Bianca. Okay, so those are things you have to ask before implementing the change. And remember, that should always be done in writing. You can send it via email to Bianca, but it's best to do that via writing and provide as much context as possible. The more information you're able to give, the easier it is for Bianca to be able to give you a response and to be able to give you a response quickly without having to ask for a lot of additional information. In particular, you know, if you're asking to do something that's outside the scope of your original project, definitely always include a justification and any budget implications. All right. Any questions on what we've been talking about in our FAQ section or other FAQs you have that I didn't cover? And I see a question, would adding another class be okay as well? Yes. So going back to that supplanting issue, let's say the school district is offering one class a year of language. And so they can accommodate, say, 25 kids, but there's much more demand. You have a lot more kids wanting to sign up for language services. So you could hire a second teacher to provide that second class. That would be fine because that's adding on. So you're adding services, not supplanting. So you can't take over that existing service, but you can build upon it. You can provide more. Absolutely. And I have a question. What do we do when very few students are signing up for a service? We've tried several things. So I'm going to give you my feedback, and then I would love for some of the other grantees to share your thoughts on what you do when one of your services isn't getting a lot of signups. I would say, one, you may want to evaluate, is that really a need in your community? Maybe originally, you know, this grant was written a few years ago. Many of you, it was written right at the start of the pandemic when things looked a lot different in your community. So that may have been something that was a need at that time. And maybe now it's just not that much of a need. So you may need to reassess what services you're offering. You may need to offer that service a little differently and look at it that way. It's okay for a service to not be needed anymore. Just because you said you were going to provide, say, geometry tutoring, if no one really needs geometry tutoring right now, but you've uncovered a need where you really need some biology tutoring, then you may need to change it up and do that because you're meeting the needs of your students and of your community. So don't feel bad if a service is not being as wildly successful as you anticipated. And then the other thing is, I would get with your students and who are actually signing up for it, since there are at least a few, and ask, you know, why did you sign up? Why do you think other people aren't signing up? If you have other kids who are highly involved in some of your other services, maybe talking to them as well about why this particular service is not of interest and why they think it's not catching on. I always like to go straight to the source. I've always found my students give me the best intel. So for anybody else, do you have any feedback on what you do when a service just isn't getting those signups? And feel free to either unmute or pop it in the chat. I know you've had this situation. Not everyone has had only wildly successful services.
We
add
get,
an
we,
incentive. Oh, John, go
get-
ahead.
yeah, we get burned sometimes, you know, it looks great. The idea sounds great. And, you know, it falls within a category of services. You know, we're trying to offer a variety of academics / cultural activities, and it just doesn't fly. And we try to figure out if is it the wrong day, wrong time, is there conflicting events going on. We try to analyze it, and we've you know, sometimes we'll try it again, but unfortunately some of these things are just that can be taught by several of our counselors or by an outside provider. So and sometimes we lose money because
Yeah.
we've had supplies and so forth. So it's sometimes hard to predict. The more you work with your groups, and the more you can really have an insight as to what will succeed and what won't. So
Yeah. Well, and I think
sometimes
that
hit
brings
or
up a
miss.
good point. You just never know. So I think I've shared with some of you before, in a past life, I ran out of school time programs for anything from pre-K through 12th grade, and particularly worked the longest with those secondary students. And you have no idea. I had programs before that I thought were the coolest thing ever. And I just had my heart set on, and I knew that the kids were going to flock to this wondrous thing. And they bombed. Nobody wanted it. It was just me twirling in a room. And just sometimes that happens, and it breaks your little, educator heart. But then you move on and it'll be okay. And then there are other times, my very favorite ridiculous story is I had a group of high schoolers who told me they wanted to start a harmonica activity. And this was in an urban environment. I'd never seen a kid with a harmonica at the school in my life, at a high school. I thought they'd lost their ever-loving minds. And I'm like, look, if you can get 6 kids to sign this little piece of paper that you want this harmonica activity, then I will spend the money to get like the harmonica sets that you've asked for and like all this stuff. But like, I'm pretty sure y'all are crazy. I don't know where these harmonica players came out of the woodwork, but all of a sudden there were almost 15 of them. It was super popular. It went on for a couple of years, and it just helped reinforce to me, we don't know. Listen to your kids, get out there and talk to them and see, because you never know what's going to take off and what's going to kind of scratch that itch for them. And then I think it looked like Ryan had an idea for you as well.
Oh, I just came on camera because no one else is really on, so I just nice having multiple
Just joining.
faces. Yeah, I'm just joining, but yeah,
That's
I definitely agree. I've had some courses and things that I thought were going to be super popular, and they're the least popular items. So there's just hoping that I'm budgeting right and picking those ones right, and thankfully we
Right.
can make lots of revisions.
Yeah, exactly. Back to the drawing board. All right, let's see. Our partner is a local school district. They cannot separate by state law native and non-native students for services. How do we handle that for this grant? So, great question. One thing I would say is to look at what services you're offering and what separating would mean. If you're going to be operating services, you don't necessarily have to separate. It could be, okay, let's go back to our language class. Let's say that 20 of the 25 are native students that you can pay for, 5 are not. That means the school district would need to pick up the tab for those 5. It's not that they can't be in the same room or, receiving that same thing. It just means you can't pay for it. So that might be a way around that, is for them to pick up that other expense. But also, I would suggest it may be helpful for us, if you're open to it, to do a specific coaching time and kind of look at some of your services and what we can do with those individually, because you may have to get a little creative there. This past year, several graduated students asked for assistance after school was out for the summer. Is there a way to serve these students next year? So that is a question that we've gotten a few times. Typically, it's fine to serve a student that summer, but once they start that post-secondary year, whether they're actually enrolling in post-secondary education or not, then they are no longer a high school student, and therefore you would not be able to serve them any longer. As well as, one thing that did come up was, if what you would be serving them for is a college activity, though, that's also a no. So I had someone ask, oh, well, it's just June, they just graduated, but I want to pay for this college course. no, that one's not going to work out, because then you're providing them um, with payment for college and putting them into that college student now role. But if it's a matter of, we had another student who, I think it was a welding class, and so they were finishing up their welding class that went into the summer, that was fine. And I see Bianca also giving a great idea that you can deliver services directly to the kids, you know, whether that be outside of the school environment, whether it be virtual, at their home, after school, summer, weekends, evenings, all that. And lots of amens on, yeah, you think a service is going to be stellar and sometimes just doesn't happen.
I was under the impression, and it sounds like I'm right, that we determined the grade based off of October 1st and what they are considered, because our program that we have, we do trimester. So
Yeah.
some students are pretty busy during the fall and spring, especially those ones that are graduating, and some of those life skills that we're providing, the students that are graduating really need it before they move out of their home and go on to working or military or college. So
Yeah,
um,
that's
that's what-
totally fine.
that's what I've done with our program here, is provide those summer opportunities for those graduated students.
Yeah. Yeah. And it, you know, you can often think of it as that's wrapping up their senior year. And then once that senior year is complete, we launch them. And hopefully they can, you know, interact with our programs in other ways, but they can't receive these services anymore.
I did have one question on that. In the unique situation, obviously, someone graduates early and then they early enroll into college. They do that first semester in spring. Are we still going based off of October 1st dates and what they were considered, or now that they've started and actually been enrolled in a university, they're no longer considered a K through 12?
So typically, if they have graduated high school and they have begun college, then that would be the kind of the cutoff for their services. Now, if it's, you know, we've had students who they're taking like a concurrent enrollment class, but they have not graduated high school, they're still a high school student. But once they've actually graduated and begun their college work, that's kind of that cutoff. Let's see. A question about providing transportation to college. No, it's going to be the same guidelines. We cannot provide transportation to take them to their college classes because now they're a college student. So it's going to be any of the services we provide are going to have the same kind of guidelines there. Oh, and a good question as well about dropped out of school. So while we do not want that for any of our kids, that we know that sometimes happens. So yeah, keep in mind that when a student officially drops out of school, and you know that's going to be different in different communities, what officially dropping out looks like, then yeah, that would go to that next that next piece, you know, that they've now moved to the adult section versus the student services. A one-way ticket to get to college initially. I'll let Bianca chime in. To my knowledge, I don't think that would be an allowable expense.
That one's a little tricky. I would want to say yes. I can run it past OGC just to confirm, because transportation's allowed. I know we can do transportation for college tours.
Mhm.
But if the ticket to get there, they wouldn't have actually started college yet, right? So that would be my justification, is that it would be prior to them becoming a college student. But if anyone is in this scenario, I'll definitely get confirmation that that's allowable, but I'll definitely push for it because, you know, if we do have students who's traveling further away for school, we should be supportive of them in their journey.
So I'm
Sarah,
gonna make a note about that so that we'll be back together for another talking circle in September. So I'll make a note that we can catch everybody up on that.
Sarah, I have a question since we're talking about transportation. Okay, we lease a van to do local transportation, short trips for our students. And of course, we're paying a lease on the van, and we're paying the insurance and the maintenance. If another department asks to use our van, is that permissible if they pay for the gas?
I mean, my gut reaction would be as long as they're paying, for the gas and for the usage, that should be okay. I wouldn't, if it's going to be significant, if it's, oh, we're going on this one field trip and we're going to pay for the gas and the driver, I think that would probably be fine. If it's something where they're now going to use it 50% of the time, I think then you have to get into cost sharing, because they should be paying part of the lease. They should be paying part of the maintenance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see I think I recall that. I guess it's just keeping track of the usage, and it
Yeah.
can't dominate the usage of the vehicle itself.
Vehicle, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, kind of keeping it fair.
thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I always think these Q&A sessions are so helpful, because if you've got the question, at least one other person probably does as well. So I think I've gone through all the questions in the chat, but if I missed you because I was going through, let me know. Oh, we have another one. Let's say I have a student who gets help from a service provider before graduation to apply for a scholarship. Application gets rejected. Student is notified after graduation. The service provider then helps them gather the missing info and file an appeal after the student is graduated. Yeah, that would be fine. Because logically, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would probably be in the summer. That's probably not something that's then happening in like December of the fall semester. So yeah, that should be totally fine. All right, any other questions? Okay. We will send this out, but remember, if you have other questions, if you want to schedule time to chat and have a coaching call at any point, you can always email us at the OIE account or go on to our Calendly. Just a heads up, we are going to be switching to Microsoft Bookings just because of trying a new service that hopefully will make booking a little bit easier for everybody. But I'll send that out once that's live. But you're also always welcome to email. I know lots of you book with us that way. Like I said, we really are, our whole purpose of having a TA team is to be here to help all of you. That is how we're able to best support. So just let us know when you need and want that support. So now we are to my favorite part. I want to know what's been going on with all of you. Like I said, we have not seen you in quite some time. I'm going to stop share so that if you happen to want to get on camera, you can. Don't feel like you have to, but you can. And I'm curious, what's been going on? What cool stuff have y'all been doing this summer? Because I know there's stuff out there. Give us the good news.
I can share.
Take it away, Tina.
So the Village of Indiana does a cultural fish camp every year. And this year we had our language program coordinator who was hired for the first time. It took us 2 years to do it, but we finally got one. And so she started Binti Kanaga language lessons within that camp. And just so you guys know, Binti Kanaga is a dialect of the Athabascan language, and it is almost extinct. We know of one fluent elder in the region, not even in our area, but in the region. So this is going to be a work in progress for the last home stretch of the last 3 years, but we're working on it. So Fish Camp was highly successful. They're going to do a moose hunt here in a few weeks. all incorporated as part of that fish camp.
That's awesome. Well, and before I forget, just one connection that I don't know if you know. I don't know if you've ever connected, and they're actually an ACE grantee as well, but with Yukon Koyukuk School District, they have developed a Binti workbook and associated games.
Yes, and we
So-
are connected with them. It is a little bit different dialect. That's where our language program director came from, but it
Yeah.
is a little bit different dialect. So
Okay. Just thought I'd throw it out there anytime.
yeah.
Anytime there's resources. What else is going on? What other great news can we share? No one else did anything exciting all summer. I just know that's not true.
Hi, this
Hi,
is
Juanita.
Juanita. So for the UMaunu tribe, we finally got contractors and we got our our programs going. And, during the summer, we had a lot of kids in the community, wanting to do stuff. So we're able to share with them a lot of things. And what is that called, Colleen? Maker space.
Mhm.
Different activities, cooking classes, a lot of culture classes. And so this fall, we're gearing up with our contractors again to set the fall schedule. And we're trying to incorporate history and language into that as well.
That's wonderful. Sounds like y'all had a beautifully busy summer. Thanks, Juanita. And I see Veronica sharing that a parent wrote that their program has vastly improved their child's mental health. Doesn't that just make you feel great? Those are the kinds of things that just are kind of invaluable. Doesn't matter what else you get in those parent surveys. That's wonderful. Any other wins to share? I think we have
Oh,
time for-
we had a school supply distribution at the end of July, gave away 139 packets. So we did it here in Marksville, also in Houston. So some of those we had to ship. But unfortunately, our COVID positivity rate started rising in June, and it thwarted a lot of our in-person activities for June and July. And that, we were just after March, we were starting to ease back in and do a lot of in-person and hybrid, and it was really cool. And then again, and I mean, it got as high as 47% positivity here
Oh, wow.
after the 4th of July week. And but it's been gradually going back down in the last few weeks. And
Good.
so hopefully within the next week or so, we can possibly get back to in-person, with some precautions. But it's like I said, it's hard to plan. You never.
It is.
Never
It's an
know.
ongoing challenge.
Yeah. So, but it was good to, a lot of our families were, excited about getting the school supplies. And so, we've exceeded our projected participation rate in the program for year 2. Our goal was 134 or something like that, and we're like 191 now. So it's
Awesome.
catching on, and so
Yeah.
we're encouraged by that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hate that the rates got that high, but amazing that even with those challenges, you've been able to get such great participation.
Yeah. Right. But we went virtual with as much as we could, so.
Make it work.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, let's have one more. Who's got a final?
I'll jump in for that final one because I'm
Yeah.
really proud of this summer and our guidance counselor program. Obviously not during the school year, so not as busy. Was able to put together a Native authors book club
Whoa.
for all ages K through 12. So specific books for the younger grades, late elementary, middle school, and high school, and some really amazing topics that need to be discussed. A little sensitive on some of them, but
Yeah.
Love the participation and actually getting students to have their own mini libraries at home, which a lot of our students don't. So really proud of that. And then also we had the dugout canoe at the beginning of the summer term. And we took that back to ancestral lands and we actually uncovered the one. I think I was talking about this, that's 1,200 years old. And we took it on those same lakes down there in Dejope. So I loved it. And yeah, Spencer, we can definitely share that info. I'll have the guidance counselor. I think I have your email still, so I'll have our guidance counselor reach out and give you some information on that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, and as a former English teacher, the fact that you're letting kids own books and books by Native authors about Native youth is so powerful. When you share that info, if you happen to have a book list, if you want to send it over, we can share it with all the ACE folks. I think that's something that would probably be of interest to many.
Yeah, we can do that. I can send the list for the books for this semester, and I also have a huge list of books that we have a research library that's going on that will be open to the community after we've gone through the research process.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, if you want to share that, like I said, I'll send it out via email and then I can also pop it on our Padlet for people to be able to access. Thank you. All right, so I have a couple of last things I want to share as we wrap up here. Thank you all for sharing. Like I said, that's one of my favorite things is just hearing what's going on in all of your programs. And in that vein, it is actually time for our year-end survey. So while it's the start of the school year, it is the end of the grant year. And so as usual, we send out our year-end survey. It is super short. You should have gotten it via email yesterday from Julian Guerrero, OAE director, but we'll also pop the link here in the chat. It literally, maybe 5 minutes, maybe. That's if, you know, you're kind of leisurely taking it. So it's not long, but it is incredibly helpful. It goes out, it's for anybody that's participated in any of our OIE events. So share it with your whole team. We want to hear from everyone. And it's really our primary tool for looking at how TA's gone the last year as we then plan for TA events for the new year. So if you can take a few minutes to do that over the next few weeks, we're just asking that you do it by the end of August. So at some point that would be super, super helpful. I also want to just remind you of a couple of things we have available. So the PD meeting that was back in May, all of those sessions were recorded, including the keynotes, and that's going to be up on that Pathable site for a year. So remember, you can go back and access any of those sessions, as well as we've had some people say, you know, well, can I share that with my staff? Absolutely. None of that is top secret information. You know, play at a staff meeting, send it out, whatever would be helpful and beneficial. And then also, if you weren't able to join our 50th anniversary celebration live in June, it was OIE's 50th anniversary. We had a whole day of festivities. If you didn't get to tune in, I would say at least kind of check it out. You don't have to necessarily watch the whole day, but it was a pretty fun and uplifting day. In particular, the student artist competition winners were announced. We received some really cool art from young artists all across the US. So check out those winners. You can actually download on the OIE website posters of the winners, as well as a commemorative bookmark that has all the winners on it. So super cool. We're going to be announcing the new theme and the new student artist competition for the new year in the next couple of months. So keep your eye for that. And then as it is the start of a new school year, I find that often you may have had some staff changes. So we like to keep our email list as up to date as possible. If you have new staff team members that you want included on our email list and on our calendar invites and things, let us know. Just email us with their name, their role, and their email address, and we'll get them added. And then finally, upcoming events. We do have the next Talking Circle coming up in September. That's going to be on September 7th. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. And then office hours, the next one is on August 25th. And then the September one will be on the 22nd. Remember, that's that come and go. You can hop in and out. And then I'm going to take those last couple of questions in the chat. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to pop up our end of event poll for you. if you don't mind taking a minute, this one's super fast, so you can take it on the screen. But I saw the question asking if we would be at NIEA. So yes, I know Bianca's going to be at NIEA. I will be at NIEA. Most of the OIE team. Alani will not get to be at NIEA in person this year. She'll be joining us in spirit. But yeah, we will be there and hope to see many of you face to face for the first time in quite some time. Then let's see, any info on the new competition. So I'm guessing you are talking about the NYCP competition. No news just yet, but stay tuned. We do hope to be announcing those new grantees quite soon. But do know, we'll definitely send out notification. It will not be a quiet announcement. So as soon as we're able to announce those, we will let you know. It'll be exciting to have a new group of grantees.
Hey, Sarah, real quick.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to be at NIEA, I know ACE does not allow a lot of funding for any type of professional development, but if by chance you are going to be there and you would like to highlight your grant, we are looking for that for one of our sessions. Also, if you have like slideshows or videos that you have permission to share, we are looking for that as well. We definitely want to show off our grantees and all the great work you're doing. So if you are going to be there, let us know. We might be putting together like a panel. But if you have any content that you would like sharing, you can send that in as well to my email. And we will be, sharing. I will not be signing autographs. I'm nowhere near. I need your guys' autographs for all the great work you're doing. But yeah, I will be there pretty much the whole week. And I look forward to it. It's definitely our first conference since yes.
Did we lose Bianca or is that me?
No, she's cutting out a little bit.
Okay, good. Not good, but good. It's not
Yeah,
good.
but no, it's not just you.
Not taking pleasure in Bianca's discomfort.
Yeah.
Or disconnection. Okay. Hey, Sarah, actually one quick question. So the GEPRA slides that you had earlier, these slides we'll get access to those here pretty quickly because that's as opposed to going through the web recording. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I can send those out when I send out the recording. It'll probably be tomorrow by the time the recording processes. But yeah, I'll send it all out.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No worries. Yeah, and I know Bianca's having some connection issues, but I have a feeling she was just sharing that we're excited to be able to hopefully see some of you who will be there. And like she said, if you have any photos, videos, info, we would love to be able to highlight that in some of our NIEA sessions, as well as we're always looking for programs to highlight in the newsletter too. So be sure in the next couple of days, the latest OIE newsletter is going to come out and you'll notice one of your fellow ACE grantees being highlighted there. So yeah, always share that good news. We love hearing from you, what's going on in your programs. And I'm just going to put up our final contact slide. I will stay on. If you have any questions, like I said, I'm happy to stay on and answer those. But thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It is really great to see everyone after a few months of kind of quiet time. And then we'll see all of you on September 7th. And I look forward to kind of hearing how the new year is kicking off for everybody. Have a great rest of your Thursday and a great start of school.